Hey there, everybody. Thanks for tuning in today. We're just going to give everybody an extra minute or two to tune in. Maybe meetings are wrapping up. So we'll get started around like 1:02. All right. Well, we can go ahead and get started here. So I want to thank everybody for taking some time out of their day here to join us on this webinar. We're going to be focusing, of course, on driving bid competition with vendor diversity initiatives. And so a bit about the agenda, right? We're going to be talking about what vendor diversity is, why vendor diversity, what your peers are doing, some tips and strategies for success. And before we start, I want to let you know there is going to be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So if you have a prominent question during the presentation, feel free to throw it in the chat. Otherwise, please save your questions to the end and we can all talk about them afterwards. So this is me. My name is Julian Nelson. I'm an account executive at Bonfire. So I'll be teaching or talking you through all the data we've gained on vendor diversity, why we're seeing a shift towards more and more capturing and reporting on these metrics. So many of you may be familiar with the term vendor diversity or supplier diversity, and we talk about it a lot at Bonfire. But what is it, right? So it's defined as a proactive business program that encourages the use of diverse businesses within an organization's supply chain. This means making a point to include disadvantaged business enterprises, or DBEs. A couple other acronyms you may know, right, depending on which state you're in, could be historically underutilized business, or HUB, as well as small women-owned and minority-owned businesses, or SWAM. These are businesses that are at least 51% owned by a member of an underrepresented group, such as Black, Indigenous, and people of color, women, veterans, members of the LGBTQ+ community, those with disabilities, and many organizations consider small businesses as diverse vendors as well. So this concept has roots in the civil rights movement, where pressure from the public caused President Nixon to hand down an executive order in '69 to encourage the use of these businesses. And then later on in 1978, Public Law 95/507 came into effect to encourage government contractors to include diverse vendors in their supply chains. So one misconception some people come to is that this is a handout to small and diverse businesses. So this is not the case, right? This is not a reflection on the quality of their goods and services. It's simply opening up more opportunities for them to get a foothold in government contracting and creating a valuable, mutually beneficial partnership with your agency. It's simply a different way to do business with a new group of suppliers. So why is vendor diversity important? Now we know what it is, but why is it important? There are a lot of factors that could make these initiatives important, but here's a few that we'll be speaking to today. So as we know, vendor competition is at the core of securing best value contracts. Engaging disadvantaged and small business suppliers is key to fostering competition amidst the big players. It also encourages these big players to use DBEs as subcontractors, maybe. Secondly, public procurement teams have a unique opportunity to promote the social good of your community by creating a level playing field for disadvantaged and small businesses. So governments have a huge amount of purchasing power, right? So for example, the US spends roughly $600 billion per year procuring goods and services. So public agencies can use that power to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in our society while also creating economic value. Next, the Biden administration has outlined intentions to support small business and tackle inequities in the federal contracting system, including tripling federal contracting goals for small disadvantaged businesses by 2025. So as these plans continue to become actions, public agencies of all sizes should be proactive. Lastly, more competition means more innovation is happening with the vendors you're working with, and that increases the value for both for you and the vendor, but it also promotes innovation within your organization as well. We'll dive into some of these changes you'll see in your agency in a moment here, but assessing internal processes and tools and changing them to fit evolving needs is the innovation a lot of public agencies can benefit from. And the benefits don't end just at social good, right? Vendor diversity initiatives are a sound business strategy, and that can have a pretty huge impact on your organization and your community. As of 2018, the US Small Business Administration estimates there are 8 million minority-owned businesses in the US. So that's a huge vendor pool with a lot of opportunity to increase competition, and not enough public agencies are tapping into this right now. According to the Minority Supplier Diversity Council, they create about $400 billion in economic output and 2.2 million jobs, which is a lot of money and opportunity flowing into your communities and fueling growth. There's also tax revenue. Diverse businesses give approximately $49 billion annually back to the government agencies in taxes, so agencies can continue investing in improved infrastructure, services, and other projects that elevate the quality of life of your community. The more governments make an effort to work with diverse suppliers, the more these numbers will grow to benefit everyone. Right, and so what are your peers doing? In my experience, I've been speaking to public procurement professionals for over 6 years now at Bonfire, and procurement professionals are some of the nicest folk I've ever met. They're always willing to share their knowledge, help other organizations. You see a lot of collaboration that you don't necessarily see in other sectors. And so we've gathered a lot of anonymized data from a database of over 500 United States public sector agencies who use Bonfire to see how diversity initiatives are progressing and how you can leverage this information to use at your own agency. Now, every year we put out a state of public sourcing report. So as part of our report this year, we took a look at organizational data and found that there are a few types of organizations that are leading the pack when it comes to data gathering. Transportation agencies and educational institutions are creating custom form fields in the Bonfire platform to identify and track diverse supplier status and other metrics more than other agency types. Additionally, we sent out a survey to our database of public procurement professionals, and 30% of respondents say they have an established vendor diversity strategy with clear goals and a plan to meet them. 29% of respondents told us vendor diversity is an emerging priority for them, and they plan to establish clear goals and strategies in the future. So it's pretty significant growth in these kinds of responses compared to similar surveys we've conducted in the past, right? We're looking at over almost 60% of teams that we surveyed have some sort of initiative in place or are looking to have one. And so I would like to extend the same question to you today. How would you best describe your vendor diversity strategy? Great. All right, so we're seeing some good responses here. Wow, this is great. We'll keep it open for an extra 10, 15 seconds here, and then we'll chat about the results that have come in. Perfect. So if we look at that, we're looking at 33% have an established strategy, 33% of you. That's an awesome number. And then 41% of you are looking to create a strategy, right? We've got this as an emerging priority. And then 21% of you believe it's important, but you don't have established goals and strategies. And you know what? That's okay. You have at least identified that this is a priority and something to work towards in the next, few months or even in the next year. Then there are 5% of you who said that it's not a priority at your organization. And, that's understandable. There's a lot of teams right now who are just seeing this come out as a priority. We foresee that in the next few years, more and more teams are going to fall under that umbrella, but it's not happening to everyone and it's not happening everywhere all at once. So over the past few years, we've seen more and more Bonfire clients making supplier diversity a priority in their organization, and the data we have reflects the steady climb in those initiatives. Specifically, here we're talking about the number of organizations that are collecting information on the diverse businesses they're working with. We'll touch on this more later in the webinar, but taking the time to communicate with and educate your colleagues on the value of diversity initiatives can go a long way to getting buy-in for one of the first key pieces of creating a strategy, which is gathering data. If it's the actual process of identifying DVEs that is holding you back from diving in, having a way for businesses to self-identify can help you take that step and start collecting data to inform and track the performance of your initiatives. So in Bonfire, you can create custom form fields for your vendors to self-identify as minority or women-owned on their profiles, or whatever minority-owned business type you're capturing. So this takes a lot of that burden of research off of you so that you can better spend your time on other aspects of your program. You can even have them upload their certifications for verification. So that's an extra step that can be handled within a tool or a software. So before we dive into the next section, I'd like to point out that many organizations approach vendor diversity as part of their corporate social responsibility initiatives. And that's excellent. But I want to reiterate that it's so much more than that. Even anecdotally, we've heard from a lot of Bonfire clients about the benefits they're seeing by more purposefully engaging with small and diverse suppliers. These clients have reported more competition in their vendor pools, which leads to better bang per buck. Getting that value and showing sound stewardship of public funds does wonders to gain back some of your public trust lost in the last couple of years due to the pandemic. And some clients have also said that creating diversity initiatives has helped in attracting and retaining talent, as we're feeling the results of the Great Resignation. Corporate social responsibility, as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion programs are some aspects of a job that the incoming younger workforce are valuing very, very highly. And one other thing is these tips aren't supposed to be rigid steps. There's really no one-size-fits-all approach to creating a vendor diversity program. What works for some may not work for the unique ecosystem you have in your organization. So we hope you take away the points you find most valuable and create a tailored program that works for you and your team. So we know the benefits now, and I'd like to ask the people who do not have a defined vendor diversity strategy, what's currently stopping you? If your answer isn't listed here, pop it in the chat and let's talk about it. Perfect. So that's good here. Yeah, so we're seeing low buy-in, right? That's a pretty common obstacle that we hear about, right? It's tough to make that sell internally to know who to sell to internally and what they're going to care about this program. There's a lot of benefits that stem from a vendor diversity program, and not all those benefits are going to be as relevant to everybody in leadership. 42% of you said you don't know where to start. That's also really, really classic, right? It's a big step. It's just you're getting thrown to the fire saying, okay, figure this out. And it's not something that we really have data on in the past. There's not a lot of information on it out there yet, as it's still a pretty new initiative. So a lot of teams are having the same issue where they're really not sure just where to begin to create this kind of program. And then 26% of you said it's not a strategic priority. And that's, there's a lot of priorities happening right now. We know there's a lot of funding coming through. There's a lot of catch up and project volume due to the pandemic and the lack of projects in 2020 and 2021. So we know that a lot of priorities are out there and that this might not necessarily be hitting that list. But for those of you for whom it is a priority, we should have a few tips in here that hopefully will make creating a program like this easier for you in the future. So number one, the first step to creating a successful program is to define what success looks like for your program. What is your guiding light in this project? Ask yourself the fundamental questions. Why are you pursuing this? Why are you creating this program in the first place? Increasing competition in your vendor pool long-term is a good reason. There's not really a bad reason to start a program like this. So basically, if you're starting a program out like this, you're going to want to write out the reasons you're creating this program in as much detail as you can, and then think about what needs to happen to see those overarching goals achieved. What qualitative or quantitative milestones do you need to hit? As far as milestones, right, it could be something like receiving feedback from a certain number of businesses or getting your supervisor on board, for example. Next, how do you measure that success? Some metrics you can track in Bonfire include number of vendors self-identifying as a DBE, how many proposals are being submitted by DBEs, and dollars awarded these minority-owned businesses. Bonfire also offers custom reports made to suit your vision for program performance tracking, so we can build out really anything that you'd like to track. Keeping a database of the vendors you're building those relationships with can be incredibly helpful. You can keep track of the number of vendors in your database, their engagement with your communications, and any conversations you've had with them or any feedback they've given. Having the details ironed out can help guide you through the next phases of your project creation. The next step is starting your vendor diversity program is to really get to know the businesses you want to engage with. Be active, engaged in your community, and listen to what these business owners have to say. Learn what obstacles they face, what resources they would need to be successful in bidding on a government contract, and take it with grace. Without their input, your program won't work, and you'll realistically be back at square one pretty quick. To get this feedback, make sure you engage in multiple ways so business owners have more opportunities to respond. This could look like hosting in-person interviews over coffee, webinars, quick phone calls, whatever way business owners say is most convenient to them. Another way to engage is through trade shows. Look into shows that cater to smaller businesses, or get in touch with associations that support business development or underrepresented groups. Hosting a reverse trade show, for example, where the vendors are the attendees and public agencies are the exhibitors, is a really great way to get face time with your target businesses. Once all this feedback is gathered and compiled, you now have the foundations of a strategy and data to present to decision makers and other stakeholders moving forward. So now that you have that data and you have a good idea of how you can help facilitate more participation from diverse vendors, the next step is to work with your colleagues and communicate the value of having a program like this, right? So this is where we have to generate that buy-in where we talked about earlier. Presenting data is a great way to start. Numbers speak volumes to decision makers and can get them interested in learning more. Feel free to use any of the numbers we provided earlier in the session, as it can help you make a stronger case. Alongside the numbers, demonstrate how this will benefit the organization, the community, and the person you're talking to. Introducing a program like this will change the way some of your team works. So spend time with those people, the ones that will be affected most by this program, and take their input into consideration as well. What's going to be required of them to make this change happen? How is it going to affect their day-to-day? A couple of questions to consider. Since government employees tend to have long tenures, it can be easy to slip into this is how we've always done things mentality, right? Which I'm sure we're all familiar with. And that means in most cases, you'll have to make a really strong case to your stakeholders to get your program off the ground. Your colleagues will already have established workflows that they're comfortable with. So think about how the change management will impact them, how this program can be implemented in steps to ensure your colleagues are comfortable with the shifted process and goals. When making your case, make sure to approach it with empathy. Right? Resistance to these initiatives doesn't necessarily come out of malice, but from a place that's uncomfortable with change. And then finally, it's not a you versus them situation, right? Creating a program like this is a team effort and should be treated as such. Get your team excited about this program and have your champions that will help you make this initiative a success. So number 4 is collaborate. A key part of your successful program working is to work with others and sharing your goal or have the avenues that can help you achieve that goal. You can start within your own organization, so you can piggyback off another department's communications, and that's a great way to reach your target business more efficiently while maintaining that sense of legitimacy. This sort of collaboration can make it easier for the target business owners to engage, since they don't have to go out of their way to learn about the program. This advice was actually inspired by one of our clients who works with the department in their organization that issues business licenses to disseminate information about the program. Next, look at outside groups like your local small business association or chamber of commerce. There's a ton of community organizations like, for example, Indigenous resource centers that you can work with. There are also state and national organizations like the National Minority Supplier Development Council or the Women's Business Enterprise National Council. Use the resources they provide, build a relationship with them, and get in touch with local chapters if applicable. The next step to creating your program is to action the feedback you've received and use the resources to break down the barriers that are preventing diverse suppliers from bidding on government contracts. Since small minority women-owned businesses may have fewer resources than other businesses, this is a key step. Many of these businesses may not have worked or attempted to work with government, so inexperience can be a definite barrier. As part of your program, having educational materials on how to work with public sector bodies can help get vendors more comfortable with the idea. Also, not knowing that working with government is even an option is another barrier. Communication and marketing are another key part of this, right? So from the 4th step of collaborate, we gave some tips on how to work with others to get the message out there, where it also lends legitimacy to your initiative. This is not really a step to be skipped, as right, that communication is going to be key in getting those people engaged. Ensure your program is both accessible and approachable. For example, using language that's specific to public procurement can be off-putting to vendors who have no experience working with government. So try using wording that everyone can understand where possible. Clients that have seen success in their diversity programs say some of their common feedback they receive is that bid submission timeframes are too short. Businesses don't have access to legal resources or accountants or other necessary professional services, as well as general time constraints, especially if you're looking at a sole proprietor business. So you, as a procurement professional, have access to more resources and have the power to change processes as part of your vendor diversity program. For example, take a look at your RFP process to see how you could remove or lessen some of these strains. This could look like lengthening your bid submission timeframes, ensuring your requirements are clear, concise, and readily available, having a designated person available to answer any questions from vendors, and making sure that all communications about your opportunities are consistent across all channels. Another thing you can do is have your legal team draft up a standard contract that business owners can work with and negotiate, rather than them hiring a lawyer to draft up their own contracts. Or build relationships with professional services teams in your organization or in your community, and work together to offer free or subsidized services if that's an option that you have. At first, realistically, you might end up having to do more of that heavy lifting, but the end result's going to be worth it. And now once your program is up and running, it's not really just a set and forget sort of thing. It has to evolve, right? You got to keep track of your metrics, like dollars awarded to those DBE businesses, number of vendors you're building relationships with, engagement with your communications, et cetera, and then use that data to inform how your program should shift to make sure it's reaching its potential and reaching your goals. So continuously asking for feedback is one of the most important pieces here. Are there still things that business owners are struggling with? How can you help ease that strain? And finally, and this is a big one, right? Don't be afraid to change. It can be a little scary at first, but creating a successful program is iterative, and seeking perfection is not productive. As more and more of the pieces fall into place, you'll start seeing more competition, as well as boosting the social wellness of your community. Now, the final tip we have for you today is to center back on your end goal. It's easy to get lost in the weeds, but remember all the reasons you wanted to do this in the first place, right? You wanted to boost competition in your bids. You want to attract and retain fresh talent. You wanted to enrich your community. You want to level that playing field for businesses that get overlooked. And you want to create more social responsibility in your organization. Whatever your reasons might be sure to take a moment every now and then to celebrate your wins and your challenges and how they've contributed to your end goal. All right, so this takes us to the final portion of today's presentation. Tech can make a world of difference in seeking or seeing success in a vendor diversity program. So using technology as a vehicle to create an accessible program for you, your colleagues, and the vendors you aim to work with can be very powerful. To those of you who are already Bonfire users, you already know about listing your open opportunities online. You've already taken a huge step in making your procurement more accessible to all vendors and can leverage that in your vendor diversity program. Customer relationship management tools, or CRM tools, are also great to keep up with your communications with vendors. You can record things like points from your last discussion, including any feedback they have, when was your last touch point, when it's time to follow up, which vendors are having a hard time, and which are seeing success. To tie into that, the data from both e-procurement and CRM platforms can be invaluable when adapting your program. It can help you demonstrate success and give compelling information to help you advocate for your target businesses and more resources for your program. So now that we've talked over the benefits and some steps to start your own program, what internal benefits would you like to see from your vendor diversity program the most? I'll throw this poll up here as well. Perfect. Thanks to all you who are putting in your votes. I'll keep the poll open for another 20 seconds or so, so we can get as much responses as possible. Awesome. All right, so we can see 54% of you said that your number one benefit was more bid competition. And that's pretty standard, right? We know that more competition has never hurt anyone. And these days, it can be a bit more difficult to get that competition. A lot of vendors have, potentially gone out of business due to the pandemic. Some are no longer going as far as they used to. So you have to go ahead and search for more that are within, the local confines of your organization and get them to bid. 18% of you said attracting and retaining talent, right? So we know that the Great Resignation has happened. We know that a lot of people who are going to be starting up in procurement in the next, even this year, the next few years, are going to be of the younger cohort, right? The generation Y and Z. They are used to using technology, right? They have strong values when it comes to diversity and inclusion. So you're right. Having that as your biggest benefit is going to be important because you need to attract some people, and we know that it can be very difficult to hire someone only for them to leave to another job that might have more of this in place, after 3 months, and then have to train somebody new all over again. 18% of you said innovation in processes and technology. So that's great too, right? We can just go ahead and lump that up with a few initiatives we have on the board as far as getting technology in, and then all the benefits technology can provide on top of just the vendor diversity side. And then 11% of you said more collaboration within your organization. And that's great to see too, right? We want organizations to be as centralized as possible, to communicate with each other, and to have one central source of truth. No sense in having 3 different ways to do something when we're all on the same team. So these are great responses. Thanks everybody who took time to put in a vote there. So in May, we had the opportunity to talk with 2 clients that have created successful small and diverse vendor engagement programs. So our conversation with Robert and Sheena, along with stories from other clients and data we've gathered, have informed a lot of the points we've talked about today. I will be sharing more of their advice with you after this webinar, so keep an eye out for it in your email. So before we get into the questions, I want to just share this quote from Sheena that had really stuck out to me. So she said, right, just from a business standpoint, supplier diversity promotes competitive pricing, it mitigates risk, it promotes innovation, it attracts talent, it supports collaboration. And these are just the benefits to your organization. I do think being intentional about connecting with local, and then DBE, SWAM, SMBE, MWBE, HUB, whatever acronym you like to use, is a very tangible and real way to lift up the community. We're seeing a lot of teams have these types of initiatives from the top down. But as procurement teams, I challenge you all to think about your intentionality when working with more diverse supplier groups. It's something that will make a real world of difference. And so now we're going to get to the questions. So we've got until 2, so we've got an extra basically 28 minutes here or so. So if anybody's got any questions, I'll be monitoring the chat, and we can chat about any questions you've got currently. And this could be about what we've talked about today. It can be about technology, vendor diversity, really anything at all. So I'll open it up to the floor here. Does everyone feel like they learned something from today's session? For those of you who don't have a vendor diversity initiative, or who didn't know where to start, or were getting a low buy-in, would you potentially be looking at revisiting that now and seeing how you can get that buy-in, or where you can start in your organization? Perfect. Got a few questions here. Awesome. So Lyle says we're currently engaged with a vendor who will likely be assisting us developing our own policy and procedures. That's great. That's awesome, right? So anybody you can find who can help out with that, that's wonderful. And as far as the bonfire metrics vendor fields, if they're included with your bonfire subscription, yes, they are. So your custom fields in bonfire, you can create any custom vendor field you would like, and there is no limit. We don't put you in any kind of creative box here, so you can really you can go ahead and create any kind of field to capture any kind of information, and the vendor will enter that upon registration. I believe we can share the presentation with participants. I haven't heard anything otherwise, so I'm sure we can just send this to all of the attendees at the end. And then Catherine, you said you're conducting a disparity study and that will lead to program requirements. Yeah, so there you go, right? That might be the way in the door, where now you're gonna have requirements along this program from this disparity study, and you're gonna be able to use that as leverage to get that buy-in internally. And I'll answer these in the text here as well, just that way we have all the responses. So are there any additional questions? Right, and it can be specifically about vendor diversity. It can be about Bonfire if you like. I know this isn't a sales webinar by any means, but if people have questions about the platform, feel free. I can help to answer anything that I can. Awesome. Yeah, well, happy that you took some information from this. I'm happy you're thinking it's good information. So hopefully it can benefit you in the short term and the long term. So for those of you who want to hop off here to take some time back into your day, thanks for taking the time to tune in. For those of you who still want to stick around to ask a few more questions, I can be here until 2, or 24 minutes, depending what time zone you're in. Maybe easier to say it that way. So I'll tune in here until we've got virtually no more attendees, and then I'll close the webinar out. But thanks, everybody. Yes, you can absolutely get a copy of these slides here. We'll send that out relatively shortly. So keep an eye out in your email, in your inbox. Yeah, no worries. All right, well, I'll take it from the lack of questions coming in now that we're all set. So thanks, everybody. And keep an eye on your inbox for the slides and a bit more information about our conversations with our clients. Sheena there. But yeah, so have a great rest of your afternoon. Again, Julian from Bonfire. Take care now.